We did get some positive news, Rodney. Moving into the big economic news of the week was that U.S. GDP in the third quarter surged 33.1%, better than expected. Now, this is an annualized pace. We don't need to get into that. But there was an estimate of 32%, so beat that. Rodney, this growth was led largely by residential investment, business spending, and of course, consumer spending, as basically businesses have opened up again. And here we are, Americans looking like they're starting to spend again. So that's certainly good news. We've got some ways to work back to pre-pandemic GDP levels, but this was certainly an encouraging report, Rodney, right?
It was. You mentioned the numbers. They are worth talking about ever so briefly. This follows a 31% decline in the second quarter. And so if just, to make the math simple, if you start at 100 and you lose 30%, you're at 70. If you then gain 30%, you're not back to 100 because 70, plus 130% is 91.
Yeah.
And so
I'm going to jump in here just to illustrate this point. This is U.S. real gross domestic product. You can see here on this chart, and then here we are.
Right, exactly. And so we've recovered. Yeah. We're not back to where we were.
Right.
We're still 3.5% below where we were before the pandemic, and we're 2.9% lower than we were at this time last year.
Absolutely.
And so those may not sound like big numbers when you're talking about a 31% decline and a 33% recovery. But remember, this is GDP. In the downturn after the financial crisis, we only dropped 3%. And so, we've recovered back to that thing. And so this has been a phenomenal change in economic growth from one quarter to another. And nobody knows where it's going to fall out. But what we do know, and to put that in perspective, we do most things on autopilot. We get up every day. We eat breakfast every day. We pay our bills. Most everybody's paying their bills. And so the consumption and spending that we do on autopilot remains the same. It's that marginal spending that changes that can make a difference.
Well, something else that changed, Rodney, interesting thing is that government spending was down. And government spending is a calculation into GDP. This is the way we calculate GDP. Government spending is a contributor to that. We did not have a second stimulus. And we're looking at basically, if we want to talk about making up that gap to where we were, at least just to get back to even, it's a little under $1 trillion, Rodney. And so if there was a second stimulus, one that was, $2-3 trillion, and not all that money goes out the door immediately, but that could have actually, based on the formula of GDP, we would have been back to that level, wouldn't we?
We would have. It's not business spending. Those are transfer payments that are then spent by individuals. And so it would have boosted personal consumption a little bit more. And so we would have gotten closer, and not all the money is spent at one time. So some portion of the stimulus that went out during the summer, and some portion of the federal unemployment benefits were spent over the third quarter as well, because people do spread it out. But yeah, it definitely would have added to it.
Now, looking ahead to the fourth quarter, we certainly don't expect to see another giant pop like this. This was actually a little bit of that light switch economy that we've heard doesn't exist. So, but it actually does to a certain extent, because what it essentially is you shut down the businesses so they close, and when you reopen them, people spend again. But it's not enough to get all the way back yet. But looking ahead to the fourth quarter, got holiday spending coming on, and I got a story here. Well, this is from Gallup, is that they say Americans plan on spending less in the holiday season than they did last year. So that could be a sign of worry, couldn't it?
It could, but we have more people. We keep adding to our adult population because of the millennials are adding into the economy at a much faster rate than the boomers are passing. And so I don't know that this is indicative of lower overall holiday spending. I've seen estimates anywhere from down 8% to up 1%. And so again, it's one of those things that's just, people don't know yet. Because on the flip side, you have people who have a lot of money and haven't been able to spend it. And do they go a bit more lavishly this year just because they can't? If they can't travel, because you're going to see not as many people get together on holidays, do they send a bigger gift?
Yeah.
I think the airlines are the ones who are in trouble over Christmas. I think Best Buy and Amazon are going to be, rolling then in the dough. So
will GDP at the end of the year be negative or positive for 2020?
Negative, no question.
Okay. Well, thank you for that. Thank you for that downer. Ron, I got two quick things I want to hit before we get out of here. One, last week we talked about, I posed you the question, is it over for Netflix, where they had stalling subscriber growth? And one of the solutions we had, because they have such a massive subscriber base, was what? To raise prices. Got a story here from CNBC. Netflix raises prices on standard and premium plans. They're bumping up. It looks like about $1 each. Or $1 for the medium plan, and then for the premium one with 4K, I believe is going up $2 to $17.99. What do you make of this? Just another prediction, or what?
Yeah, that's what I've been talking about with Netflix for over a decade, right? Every time somebody thinks they're in trouble, all they have to do is raise their price by $1. They're still under $20. We're sticky as consumers. We don't like to change. We have to learn a new password. That's the hardest part of all this, is learning a new idiot login and password. And so, so it's another $1. It's another $2 until it, is over $20. Yeah. I don't think anybody's paying attention. And arguably rightfully so, right? Because if you're watching this with any consistency and it goes up by $1 and you spread that across the hours that you're watching it, if you're watching 20 hours a month, which is not a stretch, you're talking about a nickel. And so per hour. And so it's not a thing. Yeah, but it sure helps them.
We have The Office and I have Star Trek on a loop essentially at the house. So yeah, I did that. That was
which Star Trek, because that says something about your personality.
The original series.
Oh, of course. Okay.
And I like The Next Generation. Anyways, yeah, I was going to ask you the other question. I was going to ask you where the pain point was. So you think it's about $20?
I do. I don't think people pay attention before that.
All right. Final thing, Rodney. Here we talk about how we break through the mainstream media box, and there's nothing more mainstream than the Associated Press. And this whole thing about fact checking, Rodney, this has become a little cottage industry profession that is quite silly. And I think this is a great illustration of its silliness. Story here from AP News. Biden did not eulogize former KKK Grand Wizard. Now, this is referring to former Senator Robert Byrd. He says a widely shared post on Facebook claims when he died in 2010, former KKK Grand Wizard Robert Byrd was eulogized by Joe Biden. Go ahead, Facebook fact checkers, verify this. I dare you. Here's where our mainstream media, Rodney, they really step in to clarify things for Americans. But this post is misleading. Byrd never held the post of Grand Wizard in the Ku Klux Klan, a top leadership role, though he was a member of the organization in the early 1940s. As a young man, Byrd recruited members to a local KKK chapter and was elected to the post of Exalted Cyclops, Rodney. So this post is clearly false. Robert Byrd was never a Grand Wizard of the KKK. He was merely an exalted Cyclops. I can't believe this election misinformation is being spread on social media. What is Mark Zuckerberg going to do about this, Rodney?
Hopefully he's going to tell both sides to go away, because yes. Robert Byrd has been dead for more than a decade, and this does not matter, right? And so it's something that he did in the 40s. And so here we are, almost 80 years later,
talking about it,
using this as, a bludgeoning instrument to beat on people about politics today. I am not defending the AP. I'm not defending Facebook or any of the fact checkers, because I can take issue with a lot of them. I'm saying that we've gotten to a point where people can go online and make these outrageous statements for no other reason than getting a reaction, which wastes all of our time. And so that's the big ripoff here. You and I are being ripped off for our time as these people use this to bludgeon each other, and it just sucks up all the oxygen in the room.
Yes. Although I would argue the mainstream media is trying to bludgeon us, or at least tell us that we're stupid this was...
no question.
This whole fact-checking thing, the substance was correct, but you got a detail wrong, so false. Okay, great.